CRTV News, ici, toute l'info.
Welcome to GLOBEWATCH with me, Charles EBUNE. Coronavirus put every business almost on the hold. All business meetings are held online. But American businesses, which have been one of the largest in the world, have remained operational somehow despite the lockdown seen in countries like France and the United Kingdom, plus some in Africa like South Africa. So what does the business environment seem to look like in the post-COVID era, and particularly at the time when the American administration is passing on to another new government? My guest today to talk about U.S. businesses in the world and in Africa in particular is one of the chief executive officers of a U.S. international business, HUFFINE. HUFFINE, welcome to GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, one of your greatest statements indicate that the greatest opportunity for revenue expansion and long-term stability is adding a strong international component to your portfolio. Just how essential are international operations to the functionality of U.S. businesses around the world?
They're already vital, and they're becoming increasingly vital. 95% of the world's population is not American. So the U.S. only has 5% of the world's population. That means the majority of the markets are overseas. Finding ways to develop trade between the United States and other countries where both countries benefit is a central point to helping both U.S. businesses as well as businesses outside the United States grow and transform, even during this time of COVID-19.
You have been operating for roughly 40 years now, found in all the 6 continents as the HUFFINE Group. Tell me more about the nativity of your businesses.
What we want to do is help find markets for U.S. companies, and at the same time, in other countries, find ways to help develop natural resources in those countries so that they can help support and improve life for the people in those countries. This is a unique group of people who have not only the best interest of developing trade, but also the best interest of the other people in other countries. So what we're trying to do are find ways to make this development mutually beneficial to all parties so that both nations benefit and both nations are improved.
For your roughly 40 years in the business world, you have helped raise about $100 million in projects globally to ensure that businesses succeed. What are the key areas you are interested in?
Well, especially in the Cameroon area, some of the areas we're interested in are the energy sector, the infrastructure sector, which includes roads, housing, and railways. We're also interested in the agriculture sector, the healthcare sector, and other types of industries that would support those. We've had many meetings here already at the ministerial level, beginning with the Prime Minister. The ministers here are very supportive of working with us, working with the companies I represent, to help develop the natural resources, help provide the needed product and services into Cameroon.
You have a huge background in business operations, and we'll be getting into the nitty-gritties for the moment. But I just want to tap your brain just how much of an opportunity has COVID-19, which has paralyzed the global economy, been an opportunity to businesses around the world? If you look at the U.S., most countries were confined completely, France, Britain.
Yes. COVID-19 has dramatically changed how business is done, not only in the United States, but around the world. If you look at the GDP, the growth of the economy over the past year, the second quarter in the U.S. was a horrendous quarter with a tremendous loss. But the third quarter had over a 30% increase in GDP. When you are faced with something as dramatic an impact as COVID-19, you need to change the way that you work. Now, in the United States, a lot of that meant virtual meetings started happening between businesses. But here in Africa, here in other places outside the United States, it is important to have face-to-face meetings, to travel those countries, to take the precautions needed, and at the same time understand better what the needs are, what the goals are in other countries. So even though this initial economic trade mission is a small number of people, just 3 of us came this time because of COVID-19, we represent 15 different companies.
Well, you represent about 15 different companies, and one of the sectors you just spoke about is the health domain where you intervene. I know that you have a huge experience in establishing the DNA, especially in war-torn zone of soldiers and whatsoever. How can that be lucrative in Africa, for example?
Well, my initial background many, many years ago was in forensic DNA testing. I was one of the very first people to enter this particular field back in 1990. As a new field is just beginning. At that particular point, we began to develop this technology, and over time I would eventually begin to travel to other nations around the world to help them develop forensic systems. That would mean I meet with prime ministers, with the presidents, with the Minister of Health, the Minister of Interior, however the DNA laboratories reported. So based on that, you begin to understand the politics of how things work. You meet with the businesses, understand how the businesses work. So in this particular aspect, what you learn is how you bring business into the country to make it successful. And I have helped over 60 countries develop these type of systems.
Which are some of these countries where you have developed these systems?
Well, in addition to the United States, since I was one of the first ones there, I lived in Bosnia, in the former Yugoslavia, for 5 years.
During the war period?
Just after the war period.
Okay.
I went there immediately after the war ended and set up the forensic system there to help identify the victims of genocide. When I first went there, Bosnia had no capability to do this type of DNA testing. We got the financing, we got the support, we built the system. Within 3 years, Bosnia was making more DNA-based identifications of missing persons than the rest of the world combined. I have also done a lot of work throughout Latin America. I've helped in South Africa. I've helped in multiple Asian nations. So it truly is global.
You work with public and private companies, and like you indicated, you represent an interest of roughly 15 US international businesses. Just tell me, you have a success rate of about 70% in enabling partnerships. At times it doesn't just work. How do you do that?
Does this company, this group have the same philosophy of work that you do? Do they truly want to make a difference, a positive difference? Then once you understand that, one of the next keys is bringing financing to various projects. In the United States, there's multiple ways that the United States government helps fund projects in other countries if U.S. companies are involved. So a lot of what we do is we look for the grants that are available, we look for the low interest loans that are available, we try to find, if we create a JV agreement, what sort of financing options are available there. So finding the right partner is a key, bringing the right product or service is a key, and then providing the financing option is also a key.
When you look at the American market globally, when it comes to corporate America that you and I are talking about, people know of the big tech companies, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You go to the business environment too, you find companies like General Motors, General Electric. So why is it that these globally renowned companies are not doing businesses like General Motors in particular, establishing subsidiaries of their manufacturing of cars in most sub-Saharan Africa? Where do you think the problem can be lying?
Well, in the United States, 90% of business, 90% of the GDP are not the mega corporations. They're the small to medium-sized companies. Those are the companies I am representing. Those are the companies that have a greater desire to try something new, to be creative, to be inventive. Each of these 15 companies that we're representing have a new type of technology in their industry that is truly revolutionary.
What is that technology about?
It's variable. Let me give you an example of one of them.
Absolutely.
There's a company that we're working with called PhotoGround, and their CEO is here with me on this particular trade mission. What Fertile Ground does is take some soil and they do a DNA test on it to see what microbes are available. Then they make a solution that replaces the missing microbes. What happens is they will guarantee at least a 20% increase in the crops, but it's often 30, 40, 50, 80 to 100% increase because those bacteria release the nutrients in the soil that the plants can take up. So not only do you have greater growth and greater productivity, the crop itself has a greater nutritional value. So it truly makes the soil living again as it enriches the soil with nutrients and organic compound.
I'm glad that you are talking about agriculture and food in particular, because if you look at data and other components of statistics from the World Food Program, we are in a terrible food crisis around the world. When you look at the number of people suffering from hunger, roughly 850 million people. Just how committed are the businesses you represent their interests in slashing, in reducing hunger by investing in the agricultural domain?
They're very interested. Once again, going back to Fertile Ground as one example, they are willing to do a pro bono pilot study here in Cameroon, already have begun those steps. Each of these companies, the funding, the money they may raise here, the revenue, they want to reinvest the majority of it back into Cameroon. Some of the companies that I represent are in the energy, in the oil sector. If they have projects that bring revenue in, they want to invest some of that revenue back in to Cameroon and potentially the housing area. So even though these are multiple individual industries, it's across the field of wanting to find ways to reinvest revenue back into the nation.
Investing revenue back into the nation, but these are equally communities, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where we have some fragile states. I'm talking about instability. Some of the groups you are representing, especially since you have to operate in the oil and gas sector, especially around the Gulf of Guinea, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, Angola. Do you have security firms that have to increase the security potential of the countries we are talking about, ensuring stability?
Whenever we go to an area that is not stable, we do have some sort of security team, at least initially. And if we have projects there in the country, we need to guarantee the safety of who all is involved in that particular operation. So those are meetings with the government, at the government level, to determine how can the best security be provided, what can be done so that this is successful. One of the things that we know, economic development tends to lead to increased stability. So if you are able to provide jobs, if you're able to provide food, if you're able to provide housing, and do it in a way that it's seen to help a wide number of people, that helps bring stability to a nation.
And how many jobs, for example, do you intend to leverage out of these 15 business enterprises you intend to implant in sub-Saharan Africa, not only in Cameroon, but certainly in South Africa, Nigeria, Benin, the Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana?
That's a hard question to answer.
Okay.
However, many of these companies, they want to put a facility here in Cameroon to begin producing their products. So that's immediately a way that you hire directly people. Some of the products that they make, once again using Fertile Grounds, that helps enable farmers to produce more food that they could sell. It lifts them out of subsistence farming into market and for profit farming. So each of these have their own mechanism of increasing the revenue of people on the ground, of creating jobs, and of also improving the life of people.
Just a question on how much are you injecting in terms of projecting an investment portfolio? How many million or billion dollars do you intend to invest in the next years? I know that the essence is human capital development.
Yes. In addition to financing, human capital development is critical. One of the things that some of these companies are interested in doing is helping set up training seminars, helping to work to train individuals here, potentially helping with some of the school development at the university level. So you have the human capital development. As far as the actual financial part, It's going to be at least in the millions, but what we want to do are reach agreements with the government here in Cameroon, to open up other areas to help develop it. For instance, some of the mining areas that are in the southeastern part of the country, or potentially some of the mining areas in the far north. If we can reach agreements where these can be developed in a way that provides revenue back to the nation, it opens up tremendous possibilities far beyond.
You just spoke of the oil and gas sector. I just wonder how lucrative and internationally operational is this going to be in the next 10 years when we are expected to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and one of that element is green energy. Are you investing more in green energy or in the oil and gas sector, which doesn't meet the aspirations of some international conventions? The Biden administration will probably take office as from January 20, and possibly they will be going back to the Paris climate change deal.
We represent not only companies from the oil and gas industry, but also solar power companies and hydroelectric.
Okay.
So even though getting away from carbon producing industries or energy industries is important, this needs to be done in a logical, methodical method, so that you can utilize the resources that are here and now while transitioning over to the green energies.
Let me narrow the discussion somehow and talk about you. You have had experiences in several fields of operations. You have been at the Pentagon, you have been at the White House, awarded the President's Medal, and many other elements. Most businesses in the world today succeed when it comes to lobbying. Just how powerful is your lobbying potential within the Washington estate?
I would say my ability to bring support to various projects is very strong. The word lobbying, it depends on how you use the word lobbying.
Absolutely. But it is a journalistic expression.
Yes. Okay. Let's take a hypothetical. Let's say we sign an agreement to develop a certain industry here in Cameroon. What I would do then is go back to the United States to find like-minded companies, like-minded U.S. agencies, like-minded financiers to bring together the portfolio of financing, and if needed, other type of industrial support to make the project a reality. So while that is a form of lobbying, it's not the form of the classic lobbying where you go to a government to try to persuade them to do something. This is organizing a group of individuals, a group of companies or agencies for a common goal.
For the long years you have been doing business, what do you think is the principal challenge of doing business in the 21st century, let's say in Africa in particular?
Almost without exception, one of the most challenging parts of developing a large-scale business operation is securing the financing. That's one of the reasons the initial agreement needs to be structured so that the wording permits these type of financing agencies to come in to provide the financing for the projects. Developing a project proposal, developing an overall strategy is often the easier part of this. Getting the financing and the funding is often some of the more challenging parts.
We have seen over the years a reduction, especially of U.S. investments in Africa. If you look at the Chinese for the moment, they are roughly $222 billion of investments on the continent. The American business class is roughly $90 billion. When you be going back to Washington and other areas, how will you convince the American business class to invest more on the continent, especially in youth-oriented projects?
Yes. When I met with the Minister of Housing several days ago, she used a phrase that I'm going to repeat. She said, Cameroon is a land of opportunities. It truly is. What Cameroon needs is a voice in Washington to say, here are the possibilities. They are diverse. They are large. They are ready to have companies come in and work with them to develop these resources to truly make a difference in Cameroon. So part of the next step when I go back to the United States is educational. Here is Cameroon. Here is what it offers. Here's how success can be realized. Here are my personal insights from my visit to Cameroon.
Apart from the projects you mentioned and what else does HUFFINE International offer in terms of businesses?
Well, we work with businesses across the multiple industries. A lot of it is in the healthcare field, and I can give you just one example. This is the time of COVID-19. There is so much focus has been on getting inoculations. There's also a therapeutic drug that is becoming available from a company called Pharmalactin Partners that is a type of a sugar that binds to the virus, immobilizing it, and then letting the body remove it. So it reduces the viral load in people very quickly. They need additional funding to complete the FDA trials. So part of what I do is help advertise, for lack of a better term, here is this product, here's what it does, here's its potential, so that they can get the needed funding to get the FDA approval to get their product in the market.
And how much corporate social responsibility do you practice in communities where you are implanted?
Yes. The companies we work with, the individuals we work with, need to have a like mind that when we go to a place, when we develop the resources, when we have projects there, we give back to the community. This is something that is critical. Just as an example, when I was in Bosnia, I lived there 5 years with my family after the war. We created laboratories there. We trained staff there. The Bosnia system became completely self-sufficient in being able to identify the victims of genocide. So it went from no capacity to being the world example. And once 9/11 happened, the FBI found me and some of my Bosnian partners and flew us to New York City to advise American officials on the sudden need to identify thousands of missing Americans. That was based upon the model that had been developed in Bosnia.
Well, very soon this interview will be coming to an end. I just wonder just how far you are interested in the mining sector, which is still more of a manual business in most countries around the world.
We're very interested in the mining sector. After learning more about the minerals here, the potential of mining them, the diversity, the range of minerals, and how rich this nation is, the minerals in Cameroon have the ability, if they're mined and done the right way, to enrich this nation significantly. And that is one of the things we want to do, is develop the resources so that Cameroon and Cameroonians are the ones who benefit most.
Finally, I presume that you are a Christian. What is the overriding principle, your philosophy of business?
You did assume correct on my religion. Interesting enough, a small side story, I've spent a lot of time in Saudi Arabia. They also know I'm a Christian. And it's interesting some of the conversations we can have just to understand each other. We want to help build people. We want to help build the nation. Economic development, resource development can be used to bring stability, to bring wealth to the nation, to our people. That is what we want to do. Each of the companies represented here, that is what they want to do.
The Chief Executive Officer of HUFFINE International at HUFFINE, thank you very much indeed for being guest on GlobeWatch.
Thank you so much.